Chapter 3. The invasion begins. Enkidu grips his sword tightly, as thousands of horrible creatures lay siege to the city's stone walls. Their forms are thin with sharp features. They have deadly claws and teeth. Their armor is light, covering only their vital organs, and are not decorated, or of as good a quality as those of officers like Yamura or Anyana. "Push them back and do not relent," Doyle shouts directly into Enkidu's thoughts. The warrior priest cuts through several more soldiers before diving forward to avoid a charging Upos and its rider. Enkidu rolls to his feet and brings Tivon up through the center of a Sakari soldier. Another attacks from the side, but the man pivots and thrusts his blade straight through the creature's neck. Enkidu thrusts his arms out, unleashing his spiritual energy in a huge wave. The energy slams into the first line of Sakari, instantly vaporizing them on contact, and toppling those behind them through sheer force. He fires again and again, killing a majority of the magical regiments. Not even their protective magic is able to defend against Enkidu's powerful attacks. The Sakari continue to march forward undeterred, swarming over the plateau outside of Kato to Cook like a plague. "It is of no use. There are far too many of them," Enkidu sighs, breathing heavily. "You must not waver. Continue to fight on," Doyle shouts into his mind. Enkidu nods, refocusing his inner light and turning it back onto the Sakari. Suddenly, one of his energy blasts is deflected away where it explodes far into the distance. "The one I suspect killed Rivius has come to greet us," Yamura says, stepping forward. Enkidu runs down towards the Sakari, slashing with his sword quickly. He cuts down dozens before they can raise their own weapons in defense. Sakari soldiers shriek in pain as their limbs are severed and their bodies are cut apart. As he makes his way through their ranks, he begins to find that there are an increasing number of those that are more skilled coming through the portal. His attacks start to occasionally become blocked by Sakari swords. He counters, slowing down as he's forced to take more than one swing to kill each. Enkidu ducks underneath sword slashes and continues to run towards the core of their forces. He believes that if he can kill their strongest fighters, the others will return to their world in panic. Soon, he is surrounded on all sides by Sakari, and barely has the room to swing his sword. He continues to fight as they move in on him, and cut off his retreat and advance simultaneously. The Sakari keep marching through the portal, and cover the landscape with their army. Most are infantry, but there are still several hundred riding Upos and other creatures that Enkidu has never before seen. He pants with exhaustion, dropping to one knee. He manages to keep blocking with his sword, but is unable to launch any kind of counter-offensive. Soon, the Sakari forces part into two rows as their superiors make their way towards Enkidu. He stares in horror at the four most powerful beings he's ever seen in his life. Humanity. Such an interesting species. They have come such a long way and developed so much. It is a shame that we must end their struggle so soon, Anyana says. "All things pass away, some more quickly than others," Yamura adds. "This particular human has survived longer than I expected any of them to," he says. "Let us kill him so that we may prepare for this new world's dawn," says General Gishbar. From the tropical city of Samuth, Ishvar's skin is dark green and covered in slime-coated scales. His head is round and hairless. He has only indented slits for nose and ears, not unlike the sensory pits of a viper. Now, the battle approaches, the slits on his head flare out with excitement, like small fins. "Enkidu, help us," Taraxime says, bound by ropes behind the Sakari leadership. Ymura turns to look at the female with intrigue. "He is familiar with this one," Ymura says. Grinning, he extends his claws and presses them to the woman's throat. "Throw down your sword, or I shall end her." "I cannot," Enkidu says defiantly. "One life cannot outweigh the lives of the rest of our city. Release her, or it shall be you who is ended, demon." "I do not make idle threats, human." Ymura growls and rakes his claws across Taraxime's throat, producing a geyser of crimson. Enkidu closes his eyes and feels a deep sadness. He resolves to make each of the creatures pay for their evil. The third general, named Udu, steps forwards and draws his sword. The youngest of the four generals is arrogant and brash. His all-black skin is covered with red spikes, and each of the spikes is, in reality, a poison-producing gland. His hair is the same color red as the spiked glands, and dripping with the same poison. Hailing from the old feast race, they are masters of fighting with their deadly secretions. "I shall do the honors," Udu grins, pointing his sword at Enkidu. Enkidu uses his sword to help himself stand. He is far past the point of exhaustion, having fought against so many foes. He knows, however, that he cannot give up. He must keep fighting. "Now, Master Voiles, it's time that I put my training with you to its limit," Enkidu thinks, willing himself to fight on. "I pray for the Creator's strength to flow through me and sharpen both my blade and my senses. Guide my hands so that each blow strikes true." General Udu lunges at Enkidu with a head-level swing. Enkidu ducks beneath the swing and puts both hands on his sword, and drives it up towards the Sakari's exposed chest. Udu drops his arm down quickly to block, deflecting Enkidu's thrust to the side. Udu runs his blade across his spike glands until it shines red with poison. He leaps forward, slashing down towards Enkidu, who's barely able to bring his own sword up in time to block. The force of the Sakari's strike drives Enkidu to a knee. Udu recoils and swings again, clipping the human's left shoulder. Enkidu winces in pain but retaliates, quickly forcing Udu to leap back in evasion. A strong heat fills the wound, and Enkidu notices that the inch-long cut has swollen in only a few seconds. "You've never encountered beings such as us before," Udu laughs. "The poison I secrete is fast-acting, and soon your entire arm will be numb and useless." Udu glances over at his companions, grinning with triumph. "Stop playing with him. Finish him off so that we may move forward into the city proper," Ymura growls. "You are far too serious, Ymura. You should enjoy life a little more. There will be thousands of humans for us to slaughter," Udu laughs. Enkidu grips his sword in his right hand tightly, as all feeling in his left arm has vanished. "I will not allow you demons to enter my city," Enkidu screams. "You do not have the power to make that kind of declaration," Udu says, stepping forward for another slash. Enkidu tilts his body, taking another grazing blow to his left arm, so that Udu overextends himself. He thrusts upwards with his right arm and drives his sword through the soft flesh between Udu's underarm and ribs. Udu is unable to speak, blood instead drooling from his mouth. He drops his sword to the ground and staggers back several steps. holding his side as it gushes blood. Enkidu slashes horizontally, splitting Udu's midsection open so that its entrails spill out. Udu drops to his knees, wide-eyed, and then collapses to the ground in a thick pool of blood and intestines. How can this human be so strong? General Udu was an elite, Inyana shouts in disbelief. We kill him together. He cannot survive against us simultaneously, Imura says. The general is undeterred by the death of the overconfident soldier. I cannot fight another one of them in my condition, Enkidu thinks, reaching into the small bag slung at his hip and closing his fingers around a small white orb. Enkidu pulls out a spell orb, a device containing a previously cast spell by the priest Ishmael, and then frozen in time. He shatters the orb on the ground, blinding the Sicarii with a bright light. The spell released is called Dabhu Kalu, the Death Confine. It paralyzes all who witness the light temporarily. The spell will wear off shortly. I must retreat and recover from my injuries, Enkidu thinks. He runs back through the city gates and leans against a stone wall to catch his breath. They were so incredibly strong, and I still not know if they're the strongest the enemy has within its ranks. The situation is grave. You must find Fausto. He is the only human mage in this city capable of constructing a new barrier to contain these creatures, Doyle says. Enkidu turns towards Amastus. I must find Fausto. We will need his magic to fight these creatures. Amastus calls for villagers to bring forth everything they can to barricade the breach in the gate and stall any more invaders from entering. Go. We shall hold the line until you return, but make haste and do not take any detours. They will surely break through in short order. Enkidu nods, knowing Fausto as the city's most skilled priest and magician. Unfortunately, Fausto is also very strange and eccentric, and has recently abandoned his faith and quit the priesthood. This fact makes him very difficult to track down or rely upon at times. Enkidu tries to focus, but with so many Sicarii auras, he's unable to decipher Fausto from anything else. Do you know where he is, Master? I'm sorry, but I cannot help you with locating him. Fausto has closed himself to me, and I can no longer sense his presence. Enkidu runs door to door, finding only frightened villagers. He tells them to barricade their doors and arm themselves. Finally, he senses the Dabhu Kalu spell has worn off, and the Sicarii have begun to advance towards the city walls. Bring their feeble defenses down. I am ready to tear their faces off, Inyana growls. Enkidu runs back to the city gate where a dozen guards strain to keep it closed, knowing that finding Fausto will be pointless if the Sicarii break through the walls and flood the city before he returns. They will break through, one of the guards shouts. Do something, Enkidu! Enkidu's left arm is still numb, and he honestly does not know how he can help. Right now, Fausto is the only person who can save us. Have any of you seen him? He was in the alley behind the temple drinking this morning. Please do not tell me that we must depend on him, the guard shouts. He is the most powerful priest in all of Kataltakuk. We need his help. Magic will not save our city. Brave warriors will stand, or the city will fall. Amastus, I know you do not care for the mystical, but this situation requires it. Magic opened the door to let them into our world, and it will be the only way to send them back. Amastus takes a deep breath and sighs, resolving himself to a decision he does not wish to make. The gate buckles and finally splinters, as dozens of crude weapons chip away at it. Go find Fausto, and save the city, I shall buy you as much time as I can, Amasta says, drawing his sword and backing away from the barricade, just before it's finally torn asunder. The Sakari hordes rush through the opening and are met by the blades of the brave city guards. Go! Amasta shouts, bringing his sword down across the Sakari's shoulder just as another guard beside him is tackled to the ground and stabbed repeatedly. Amasta slashes in a fury, cutting down many Sakari. Blood begins to spread out beneath his armor and soak his shirt. He does not remember even being struck, but continues to fight against the growing pain and swings again and again in every direction. Another guard takes a sword to the neck, collapsing without a sound as blood sprays from his jugular. Enkidu sprints down the street, forcing himself to not look back as the sounds of brave men are brought down by hundreds of Sakari as they thunder through the city gate. He knows Amastas is a brave and capable warrior, but he will not last long against the more powerful Sakari once they appear. By leaving him, he knows that he has sealed the man's fate. Amastas also knows his fate, but both must do what is needed to save Kataltakuk. This is hopeless, Enkidu thinks, knowing that soon Amastas will be killed. If you truly believe that, you will be correct, Doyle says with sadness in his voice. Doyle has come to truly care for the humans he observes, and takes his duty to train them to protect themselves very seriously. To see the despair overcoming one of the strongest-willed and bravest warriors he has ever seen is almost too much for him to bear. Enkidu fights back his doubt and refocuses on his task, to find Fausto. He continues running, but soon senses that the Sakari are closing in on him. Many have managed to get past the guards. Sakari leap through doorways and windows, pouncing on villagers, biting, stabbing, and dragging them away. Enkidu pivots, quickly slashing as he turns and decapitating a Sakari soldier as he leaps into the air to attack. A young girl no older than 7 stands in her doorway, screaming in terror. Enkidu dashes through the opening, scooping her up into his good arm. Where are your parents? Enkidu asks. Father is a gate guard. Mother went to fetch water from the river, she sobs. The poor child's father is surely dead, and if the mother was outside when the demons appeared, then she too is no more. Several more Sakari enter the hut, grinning and drawing their swords. A child, one of the Sakari says, drooling with anticipation. I have often wondered what a human child tastes like. Enkidu grinds his teeth together in anger, and launches himself towards the Sakari. Before they can react, Enkidu runs the first one through with his blade. The Sakari's drooling saliva reddens into blood, and his eyes bulge as Enkidu pins him against the wall and rips his weapon horizontally across his chest to dislodge it. As the Sakari slides apart in a geyser of blood, Enkidu turns and brings his blade down across the second one's front and carves a 2-inch deep trench through his body. The dwelling is soon dripping with Sakari blood. The girl begins to scream again, but a boy, a year or two older, comes running from another room and covers her mouth with his hand. I heard the commotion. Are you all right, sister? He whispers. She nods, burying herself in his arms. Can you use a sword, boy? Enkidu asks, picking up one of the fallen Sakari's blades. The boy is thin and his hair is unkempt and shaggy. He nods slowly, obviously afraid as well, but trying to hold it together for his sister's sake. Enkidu flips the weapon in his hand so that the handle is extended towards the boy. Your only duty is to protect her. Can you do this? Enkidu asks. The boy slowly nods again. Nearby, 2 Sakari soldiers enter a home as they check the buildings one by one for humans in hiding. From other buildings, women and children are dragged out into the streets screaming, while the men and more ferocious women give their lives to protect the ones they care for. Inside this particular building, the soldiers find the sole inhabitant already dead. Before the Sakari can investigate further, a blade flashes out of the darkness across their throats. Blood sprays outwards as the soldiers fall, never seeing their attacker. and Azria steps out of the shadows, dragging the bodies out of view. More will soon come to check. We have to keep moving. His companion nods in agreement. I have no interest being thrust back into this war. I would sooner be killed than become one of their dogs once again. There are a handful of humans in this city possessing unique abilities. If I can seek them out before the generals, their powers could be useful in thwarting any who seek to return us to captivity. You can sense humans? Sinkal asks, surprised. He is not much of a fighter, but does not understand the auras that different individuals emit. My earliest gift was the ability to become aware of others who have great power. It was a natural evolution of my power that makes me an even more effective apex predator. It is how I am able to hunt down and kill my prey. And it does not matter how you kill them, so long as you do it? And Azria shakes his head. No, it is more complicated than that. I must engage a specific ability known as Seal Voltaire. This ability allows me to absorb the powers of any who I then slay. There are others with similar abilities, but as I know it, I am the only one who can take on the abilities of others. Even General Yamura has a modified seal ability that converts those he slays into regenerative energy. I believe my seal to be a much more evolved version of that power. If you and the General fought, could you defeat him? And Azria is hesitant to answer. He's often wondered the outcome of that very same scenario. There is no path to freedom without eventually crossing swords with one of the generals. Yamura possesses tremendous raw power and a matching cunning that would be difficult to overcome. With preparation and no interference from the others, I do believe that my superior library of skills could best him. Inyana pushes Amastus to the ground with her foot, her sword sliding from his gut as he falls. Some defenders. The humans are going to be far too easy to overcome, she laughs. Do not forget about the one who killed Udu. I do not believe that he is the only human capable of such strength. There are surely others like him around, and we must not become too overconfident, Yamura cautions. You give the humans far too much respect, brother. The one who killed Udu was obviously the protector of this city. He fled from us in fear. The remainder of the city cannot be a threat to us if their strongest is afraid, Inyana argues. I agree with Inyana. He was waiting for us. He was the one that all hope was placed upon for our defeat. I highly doubt that another stronger than he lies in wait somewhere. What strong warrior would wait this long and allow us to cause this much destruction before reacting? Hui says, challenging Yamura. Yamura shrugs. He knows what he says makes the most sense, but he does not wish to waste any more time or energy arguing. Both the Grand General and his sister are legendary for their stubbornness. Make sure that none of the humans have doubled back on us, Yamura orders. These humans are difficult to flush once they have dug into a hiding spot. If you cannot fully clear a building safely, set it ablaze. The humans will come running out soon enough. This feels more like hunting cave Hushia than a military campaign, Gishpar sighs. The humans are not very organized and tend to run and hide rather than fight us directly. We broke their spirits when we breached their defenses. I would wager that those we killed early on were their strongest warriors, with the exception of the man who killed Udu. Now that they have no forces left to stand against us, what else can they do but run? Hui asks. Even after raiding this city, I do not think we will have enough supplies to keep those we have gained as slaves alive through the march to the next settlement, Yamura says, looking at the ever-growing group of human captives. After taking this city, we will post a contingent of soldiers to guard the area as a slave outpost. The proximity to the river to our south will give us ample food and water until we are able to send the bulk of our forces onward to the next city, Inyana says. Should we send some of the slaves back to Narain while we have the opportunity? Ishbar asks. Inyana shakes her head. We will make the trip only when we have the stores of a much larger city at our disposal and are able to spare enough soldiers to escort the slave caravan. Until this city is taken, I do not wish to spare any able-bodied fighters. Several men of the city run at the Sicarii with sharpened spears, but Ymura steps into their attacks with a horizontal swipe that spills out the guts of the brave men. Another man turns to alter his swing, but Ymura moves in fast, kicking his legs out from beneath him before thrusting a clawed hand through his chest as he falls. Like I said before, this is hardly challenging enough to be considered a proper military operation. I think that even the cave Hushas put up a better fight when cornered, Ishbar says. Seeing his people cut down left and right, and the screams of women and children being torn from their homes fills Enkidu with rage. He knows that he must find Fausto, but every instinct within him compels him to stop running and make a stand. He was able to kill one who is obviously one of their commanders, so it's not unthinkable that he could best the others. Maybe he could not defeat all of the Sicarii warriors, but if he can allow even a single citizen of Cataltaquk the chance to escape, he must do whatever is possible. Fighting against the urging of Hoyles, Enkidu emerges from the home he is hiding within, to meet those who would see his city in ruin. We should locate the human in charge of this city, or king or whatever, Ishbar suggests, looking ahead towards the homes and the Sicarii soldiers breaking into them. An explosion ahead consumes one of the buildings and blasts several Sicarii soldiers out onto the street covered in flames. I sense magic, Inyana whispers, being the most skilled among them in both sensory and magical areas. The one who killed Udu froze us with magic. He is likely behind this, Hui growls. Ymura draws his sword. We must proceed with caution. If he catches us with another spell, he could do a lot worse than temporary immobilization. With the chaos of the Sicarii attack on the city, and the sudden ferocity of which they arrived, many citizens were unable to evacuate from their homes before the patrols of enemy soldiers began checking door to door for humans to terrorize. No guidelines were set out for the Sicarii beforehand, for them to follow regarding how many slaves are to be taken, opposed to how many humans can be killed and tortured as they please. As a result of the confusion, numerous citizens are torn to pieces by the crazed Sicarii soldiers. Entire families are beaten brutally and treated like animals. Throats are torn, and pools of thick blood are lapped up and bathed in by the frenzied soldiers. When few slaves are brought out of the first block of homes, Ymura dismounts his Upas in annoyance. We do not have the time for their indulgences, Ymura growls. I need every soldier operating efficiently and not toying around with the humans like hungered dogs. Give them a break. They have never had an opportunity such as this, Ishbar says. They will calm in time. Just allow them some freedom to get their bloodlust out. It will do much for their morale. Ymura dismisses Gishbar's words with the waving of a hand. Time is a resource that cannot be wasted by their foolishness. Walking into one of the homes, Ymura is met by a floor made sticky by human blood and gore. Two Sicarii soldiers turn, their faces smeared with red. Between them lies the eviscerated remains of a human female. Clean yourselves up and return to duty, Ymura growls. Stop behaving like savages. We have a whole city to clear. The soldiers nervously obey, sobered by the general's threatening presence. In the next home, Ymura is surprised to find one of his own slain on the ground. The entry wound is from a crude blade, and it's at the base of the soldier's skull. Ymura recognizes the kill as one performed often by assassins and more stealthy fighters. He studies his surroundings, not wishing to be caught unaware by the lurking assassin. The screams of several young humans draws his attention, and he turns to find the criminal named Sinkal striking a female child across the face before slinging her unconscious body over his shoulder. A second child lies nearby, claw marks carved into her face and chest. She is still alive, but the girl is terrified into a deep shock and too scared to move. Yumura studies the other Sakari, immediately recognizing his ragged attire as belonging not to a soldier, but to a conscripted criminal. "You were part of Rivius' scouting force," Yumura says. "Why were you not standing by to report with the others as we approached the city?" Sinkal grinds his teeth together, utterly hating any representative of authority. "I went into hiding after the captain was killed. The humans surely would have executed all of us who survived on the spot. There was a remnant of Rivius' group in the desert southwest of this city. You could have fled with them." Sinkal unslings the girl from his shoulder and sets her on the floor. "I could not pass up this golden opportunity." His face becomes twisted by a maniacal joy. "You would not believe how much more tender and soft the flesh of these humans are. It's amazing. I could never imagine having to go back to killing our kind after the sensations I get from these humans." Yumura is disgusted by the criminal's attraction to brutalizing the young. While he does not care if the humans live or die, Yumura gains no thrill from torturing the weak. Only the besting of a worthy opponent can give the general any kind of rush. "The Central Army now occupies this city, so you are returned to service as a prisoner of King Marduk," Yumura says. "I'm sorry, but I simply cannot pass these sweet playthings over to the slavers to toil and lose their tenderness." Sinkal steps closer to the child in shock. "These prizes belong to me alone." Yumura draws his sword in irritation. "If you will not obey, I shall end your miserable life right now." Sinkal tries to grab the human and run, but the girl suddenly snaps out of her trauma and bites down onto his arm. Sinkal screams out in agony as the girl tears a chunk out of his forearm. Before the Sakari is able to strike the child with a backhand, Yumura rushes in and closes the distance between them in an instant. Sinkal looks down to see Yumura's sword buried to the hilt in his gut. "Trash," Yumura growls, pushing Sinkal off his blade with a kick. The Sakari criminal falls to his back in a midst of a swelling pool of crimson. The girl clutches Yumura's leg tightly, grateful to her savior. The general looks down at the pathetic creature with glowing red eyes. "Your gratitude is misplaced. Death shall seem like a welcome gift after a life of servitude." Yumura drags the children outside, binding them to the growing collection of human slaves. A group of 5 soldiers further down the street are suddenly felled by a hail of arrows from the surrounding rooftops. "Take out their archers!" Yumura screams, ducking behind his upos for protection. The reptilian behemoth howls in pain, taking multiple arrows to the flank. General Gishbar waves 3 soldiers to follow him as he races down an alley and begins to scale the nearest building. The Sakari come at the archers from the side, overtaking several of them before they can loose a single arrow in response. "Retreat!" Lianlim shouts, leaping backwards off the roof and firing a single arrow through the eye of one of the Sakari as she falls. The teen twists just before impact, managing to land atop several bags of grain. Wincing in pain, she rolls to her feet and dashes towards a nearby alley, with more Sakari in pursuit. She turns back quickly as she runs, felling one of the soldiers with an arrow to the throat. 2 villagers behind Lianlim manage to get off the roof, but a group of Sakari intercept them and cut them off. Lianlim turns to give aid, but the men shout for her to continue running. Reluctantly, she does as told and holds back her tears as the screams of her fellow villagers dying in agony fill her ears. Gishbar slashes through the throat of a human archer with his sword, sending the lifeless body to fall to the street. "Stay alert," There are likely more of their ambushes lying in wait. The nature of a siege puts us at a disadvantage to these type of attacks, Yamura says, appearing beside his comrade. Scan your peripherals and do not blindly approach any alleys or junctions. The humans will only grow more desperate as we push onward through the city. The surprise attacks will only increase. Yamura nods in agreement. We need to flush them out of hiding and take away any advantage they have in the layout of the city. Inyana and Hui approach from inspecting the now fully taken city gates. Having difficulties? Hui asks mockingly. Nothing we cannot handle, Yamura replies. The humans are in despair. No amount of surprise attacks will sway this siege in their favor, Ishbar says. Surprise attacks? Hui asks, still grinning. You were caught off guard by humans? A handful of nuisances, Yamura replies. Our losses were minimal. Be careful not to lose any more of my soldiers, brother. Your mistakes could cost us valuable delays. I do not wish to wait for reinforcements to arrive from Narain, because you have wasted our troops on the ground in carelessness. Yamura does not reply, merely shaking in anger and remaining silent. Enkidu peers out of a crack in the wall to see more Sakari approaching. Several are dragging people by the legs. The victims are covered in blood and do not move. Enkidu can only fear the worst for them. We cannot stay hidden in here forever. They are checking each building, Enkidu whispers to the children. The ground shakes as one of the nearby huts explodes. Enkidu runs to the doorway to see the blast has scattered many Sakari to the ground. Some are covered in flames and lie motionless. As a few of the soldiers manage to crawl to their feet, still disoriented, beams of light streak out from the smoke and impale them through the chests. It must be Fausto, Enkidu thinks with relief. Now we have a chance. An older man in a tattered maroon robe with long braided hair stands defiantly against the Sakari forces. The robe is left hanging open, exposing his bare, tanned chest. Stains and tears cover the robe, and it's obvious that it is among the man's only possessions. He's barefoot, and wears baggy black pants, which are in a better condition than the robe. Gray is mixed in with the black of his hair, and he wears a thick beard, which is also braided and adorned with seashell beads. Fausto's frame is tall and thin. His long face is dark and wrinkled, yet his eyes are vibrant with life. Go back whence you came, creatures, Fausto growls. We do not wish for your presence here. Two Sakari soldiers run at him, swords drawn. Rapata nos, Fausto says, transforming their swords into tree branches. Aginestra! The branches quickly burst into flames that spread across the Sakari's bodies and consume them in bright balls of fire. Fausto, behind you! Enkidu shouts as the Sakari runs at the magician with his sword outstretched. Aginestra! Fausto shouts as he turns, catching the Sakari on fire. Enkidu, what is happening here? He asks, jogging over to the warrior. A portal to the world of the demons has been opened up. So, it is not just a product of my consumption, then, Fausto whispers to himself, first thinking the invaders were but merely an illusion caused by his constant drinking. Did Hoyles warn you about this? Enkidu nods. Fausto is one of the only other people he has met who has communed with the Yazata. Most people in the city normally speak with relative disbelief of Enkidu's claims of an angelic being watching over them. But now, with even more unbelievable things happening, it has become unimportant to him. Did he say what fool opened up the portal? Fausto asks, kicking one of the still smoldering corpses. No, much of his ability to see has been limited of late. He fears that something worse is interfering with his watch of this world. This much demon energy could cause such an event, I would guess. Well, has he given you any ideas as to how to close the portal and reverse this mess? Just to find you. Master Hoyle said that you are the only one in the city capable of stopping them. Fausto thinks deeply for a moment, scratching his beard. He looks down the street all of a sudden, sensing the powerful presences of the Sakari officers. They've reached us, Enkidu growls, balling his right fist tightly. The commanders of this force? Fausto asks, to which Enkidu nods slowly. I sense they are very powerful. Inyana strides towards the two men. A young woman runs out into the street in terror, and Inyana grabs her by the arm, slinging her into a group of her soldiers. The Sakari pile onto the woman and tear at her flesh with their claws, and bite large chunks from her. Enkidu looks away in sadness and anger. He guesses that the lower soldiers are not fed well, keeping them in a near feral state. I sense the one that killed Udu, and he is with someone possessing a strong magical presence, Inyana observes. Enkidu tugs at Fausto's arm. They've spotted us. We must go. Enkidu is forced to turn, slashing a Sakari soldier across the chest as he lunges at them. There is nowhere to go. We must make a stand, Fausto argues. Aginestra! Inyana quickly waves her hand in a circle, nullifying the spell. Nixe, she says. Pathetic, low-level tricks. Enkidu cuts down two more Sakari soldiers. Can you perform anything stronger? He asks Fausto. It would take too much time to do the necessary incantation. I will buy you the time you need, Enkidu says, running towards the Sakari. Enkidu slashes his sword violently as he runs, cutting down dozens of Sakari soldiers in his path. He struggles to wield his weapon with one hand, still not having full use of his other arm due to the poison inflicted earlier by Udu. This time he shall not escape us, Ymir growls, drawing his sword. Enkidu decapitates a Sakari soldier and kicks another in a single swift motion. Ymir leaps in, bringing his sword down inches from Enkidu's face. Enkidu hops backwards and swipes his own sword horizontally. Ymir blocks with his blade and skids back on impact from the force. Fausto, hurry! He shouts, driving his sword through another Sakari soldier's throat. Inyana rushes Enkidu, circling him from behind as his focus is still on Ymir. Before he can fully turn to face her, Inyana slashes his back with her claws. Deep red lines carve into his back, and he shouts out in pain. Inyana pivots to thrust her claws through his chest, but Enkidu manages to turn just enough to block with his sword. He's surprised at how strong the Sakari's claws are. His sword is unable to even chip them on contact. Ich bin al-Hud, Nalarakna, Fausto chants, holding his palms together in a prayer position. Inyana continues to circle Enkidu, grinning. Does it hurt? She taunts, licking the blood off her claws. Ymir shouts at his sister in anger. Do not toy with him! Kill him! Your sister is incorrigible, Hui laughs. She is not often challenged in this manner. She is giving in to her baser instincts. Hui looks around at the burning homes and the bodies of many humans lying in the streets. I believe we've all gone down a similar path, he smiles. But what do the lives of these humans matter anyway? It is not the human lives I am concerned with. Their resourcefulness and inability to accept defeat in the face of overwhelming odds is what concerns me. Any other creature would give up if faced with a power such as ours. Yet look at these humans. They continue to struggle against us. In their desperation, they find a strength whose source I do not understand. The human sheep battles is very strange. I do not believe that we should take him lightly. You worry far too much. None of these human apes are stronger than your sister. I do not doubt Inyana's abilities or skill. You must admit, though, that the strongest warrior is not always the one who claims victory. Many factors can influence a defeat, including arrogance. A trait, I remind you, that my sister excels at. Inyana will not lose to a stinking human. There is just no possible way. Yamura does not reply, instead studying the battle very closely. Each punch thrown and kick launched has his eyes darting across the streets with interest. What is the source of your power, human? What drives you to match strength with beings such as us? You should have been easily defeated, and yet here you are, fighting on an even level with one of the strongest warriors of our entire world. Inyana swings again, Enkidu leaping back to avoid her attack. You missed, Enkidu says, raising his sword. Did I really? Inyana asks, grinning as blood steadily drips from her claws. Enkidu's face grows white as he touches his neck to feel the warmth of his own flesh opened up and gushing blood. Fragile creatures, Inyana laughs as Enkidu drops to his knees. Enkidu begins to choke. He holds his hand to his throat, applying pressure and slowing the bleeding. Fausto, it's up to you now, he whispers as he becomes lightheaded. Fausto charges up 2 orbs of light into his hands. Light cannot defeat us, Inyana laughs. Hayazunuaru, Fausto screams, combining the orbs into a single ball of light before stretching it out into a flat sheet. Fausto hurls the light sheet at the Sakari, slicing everything in its path like a giant axe. Inyana leaps up to avoid the attack, while Yamura, Hui, and Gishbar drop flat to their stomachs. Many others are cut down by the energy. Inyana lands and runs towards Fausto, enraged. Halgeror! Fausto shouts, creating a thick fog blocking him from the Sakari's view. Inyana charges into the fog, slashing wildly and screaming in fury. Fausto kneels beside Enkidu and places his palms on his chest. Dukan Heles, Fausto whispers, using a powerful healing magic that closes any wound so long as the soul remains within the body. We cannot keep this fight up. I am very nearly drained. I am not as useful as I once was. Enkidu checks his non-existent wounds in awe before responding. We must close off the gateway to their world so that more cannot freely pass through. With them chasing us, that will be difficult to accomplish, Fausto replies, grimacing as he stands back up. His knees pop and a shooting pain runs down his legs. I also must find somewhere to rest for a few moments. Inaction is not an option for us. We shall rest, but we cannot allow them to kill any more of our people. Fausto nods, and the 2 of them run down the street. Enkidu leads them back into the dwelling he was previously hiding in to check on the children. He is relieved to see that they are both still alive. We must move deeper into the city. There are more places to hide as the area becomes more spread out with less buildings and more natural barriers, Enkidu states. We cannot simply just hide. We must think of some way to stop them. We do not know their full numbers or how or why they have even appeared here. Can you get some answers from Hoyles? Fausto asks. Enkidu shakes his head slowly. My connection to Master Hoyles has been cutting in and out. I believe the demonic energy is interfering with our communications. Enkidu pauses, hearing something outside. He moves to the door to head outside and check on the noise. Stay with the children until I return. Enkidu exits the home and is immediately spotted by a Sakari soldier on patrol in the street. General! Sakari screams, running off to report that he's found their priority target. Enkidu throws his sword like a spear, piercing through the soldier's back and his lightweight armor. He quickly jogs over to the body and pulls his blade free. The damage, however, has already been done, as General Gishbar comes running from down a side alley. Gishbar slowly moves his hand to his sword as the 2 warriors lock gazes. Gishbar is torn with indecision. If he leaves to report back to Inyana, the quarry will be long gone. But if he engages him in combat, He could very well be overpowered and killed. The general is fully aware that the arrogant young Udu was more or less his equal in combat. If this human killed Udu, he may fare no better, despite his superior expertise level. This world is not for you. Leave and do not return, Enkidu commands. That is not in the essence of conquest and expansion. For the glory of Central Averno, we will take this city and spread throughout the region, Gishbar counters. The military forces of Levant and Dwarka will be far too much for you to handle. We are but a small city of mostly farmers and builders. We're having this much trouble defeating a city of farmers and builders? Gishbar thinks in horror. Our scouts said nothing of this. They made it seem as though we needed only worry about the man who killed Rivius. They spoke nothing of human magicians or resistance this well organized. Levant has over 30,000 men in their employment as full-time soldiers, and twice that number in conscripts. And Dwarka is a port city with a full maritime fleet, Enkidu continues. We will need a much larger force to even attempt at taking either of those cities, Gishbar thinks. I cannot worry about that now. If I can kill this one, the rest of the city will quickly fall. Gishbar runs at Enkidu, and the two bring their swords together in a violent clash. Enkidu's feet slide backwards, as Gishbar's strength is physically greater. Enkidu rotates his sword and manages to push Gishbar's to the ground. He follows up by thrusting an open palm to the Sakari's chest. Gishbar is knocked to his back, losing his grip on his weapon. He rolls to his feet and sidesteps, just in time to avoid a killing blow from his opponent. He sweats heavily, trying to figure out a way to reclaim his sword without sacrificing a free strike to Enkidu. Enkidu picks up the Sakari's weapon and widens his stance to accommodate the dual-wielding style of combat. Gishbar throws a hand out, unleashing a quick pulse of energy. Enkidu cuts through the attack with his sword, but Gishbar springs forwards as fast as he can in an attempt to wrestle one of the blades from the human. Enkidu hops backward and brings both of the weapons up, severing the Sakari's hands at the wrists. Gishbar reels back, blood spraying from the remaining stumps. He can no longer think clearly, and all hope for strategy fades. Gishbar's mind races to only one focus: survival. The general tries to run back into the alley, but Enkidu chases after him. Enkidu kicks Gishbar in the back, knocking him to the ground. As the Sakari tries to crawl back to his feet, Enkidu drops to a knee and plunges both swords down through his back. Gishbar's body is filled with a painful heat, and he can no longer move. He gasps for breath as the swords pierce through his lungs, and their tips emerge from his chest and splinter the rocky ground beneath. He struggles to move, pleading with his body for escape, but only darkness can find its way through. Gishbar begs his body not to give in. He doesn't want to die. Pain disappears, and even his thoughts finally fall silent. Enkidu withdraws his sword and lets out a long sigh, leaving Gishbar's own blade within him. Only 3 of their commanding officers remain, he thinks with relative relief. When Enkidu returns to the building, Fausto notices the blood covering his garments. I trust you found the source of that disturbance? Fausto asks. One of the enemy generals, Enkidu says, splashing water on him from a small bowl. He will no longer be a threat. There are still many others to contend with. If we are to have any chance succeeding, we must locate what brought the demons to our city. I fear that my kinsman Iyasian is involved. In his despair, he may have done something terrible. Can you handle speaking with your cousin alone? I know you have a troubled relationship right now. Enkidu is surprised by the question. You're not coming with me? While the elders hide and deliberate, the citizens of Kataltakuk suffer. I will do all I can to hold the demons back from slaughtering more innocents. I know little of magic. What will I even be looking for? Fausto strokes his raggedy beard for a moment in deep thought. Look for any strange artifacts or idols, objects that can be a focal point for energy. He keeps thinking, scanning his old mind for other signs. Scrolls, talismans, or books could be used to create the spell. Enkidu sighs. So basically anything. Fausto forces a laugh. Be careful and stay alert. Do not try to win this war on your own, Enkidu says, grasping his forearm in respect. I shall meet back up with you shortly. The two men part ways, with Fausto heading back into the direction of the burning homes. Ymura glances down the street, no longer sensing their comrade. General Gishbar has been slain, he says. These damned humans continue to aggravate me, Inyana growls. What a shameful reflection upon us, Hui laments. It's bad enough our soldiers are being felled by the humans, but another of our elite officers? This is too much. I warned you, Hui, Ymura growls. Time after time I advised caution and urged you not to take the humans lightly. Your fear of the monkeys has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have sabotaged us by holding back and instilling the same dangerous fear into our soldiers. Ymura's hand shakes near the handle of his sword, fighting the temptation to draw. In an instant, he could be permanently free of Hui's poor leadership and arrogance. Hui notices Ymura's conflict and grins, drawing his own sword first. If you truly wish to settle matters between us, there is no more opportune moment than now. It will take both of us to subdue the humans of this city. The warrior that killed Gishbar is not one that we can afford to make mistakes against. Hui laughs loudly, sheathing his sword. Not only is your fear of the humans paralyzing, so is your fear of me. Do not misconstrue events, Hui. I would relish in taking your head. But there are problems now that transcend our quarrel. If any of us wish to survive, all of us must work together. Despite his restraint, Ymura fantasizes about killing his superior, even as they converse. Gishbar was past his prime, Hui says. It is not unthinkable that he could have made a fatal mistake that the humans sieged upon. That may be, however. This human is fully capable of doing the same to you or me. If we encounter him, we should attack in unison and work to overwhelm him from the onset with our numbers. We will do no such thing, Hui shouts. If you fight the human and it seems that he is going to defeat you, I shall allow him his victory. I would expect the same from you. If you can be felled by a human, you do not deserve my support. Only disgrace and death shall result from defeat by one of these monkeys. Two villagers push a Sakari soldier from a building, his body speared upon the end of a farming tool. The soldier is still alive and bleeding badly when one of the villagers caves in his head with multiple stomps. Angered, both Hui and Ymura turn towards the men. It's insulting to the Sakari to see any of their kind killed by the humans, even a low-class soldier. Without having to draw his sword, Ymura moves in quickly to cut through the throats of both men with ease. Blood drips from the general's claws and he stands over the bodies, chest heaving. Hui approaches, looking down at the dead humans with satisfaction. He may dislike Ymura, but the results he produces cannot be ignored. Do you still question our superiority? Hui asks. These monkeys are nothing to us. Two of them working together just killed one of our soldiers. We cannot continue to think ourselves invincible with statistics such as these. If two of the city's weakest could fell one of our own, how many would it take teaming up to bring you down? Or me? Or even Inyana? Bah! Hui scoffs. Your imagination is overactive. Every human in the city coming against us at once would not be enough for them to prevail. You will learn nothing about your mortality until a blade bites into your flesh, will you? Ymura growls. Hui sees the movement of another villager and pivots, firing a burst of energy through the man's chest. I think that they will all be dead long before your fantasy comes true, Hui laughs. We should no longer wander off alone. It is clear that one-on-one this Enkidu is formidable, Ymura adds. Let him face us. He will regret his defiance, and I will dismember him slowly. Inyana orders them to move out, pushing further into the city. Instead of allowing the human to pick us off one by one, I believe it is time we track down Gishbar's killer and demonstrate to him the full power of the Sakari elite, Inyana says. Hui grins, looking forward to the confrontation. Whoever engages him first gets the kill. He looks over to Yamura, sneering. I will not even give you the opportunity to embarrass yourself against the human. When he has your head severed from your body, I will not shed any tears. Enough! Inyana shouts. We cannot afford to have the two of you bickering this entire war. Get your heads together or I shall have to kill you both. Put in their places by the stronger female, both Hui and Yamura fall in line at her side. They begin searching for Enkidu. Returning to the home of his kinsman, Enkidu is met by a thick fog of darkness. The darkness shrouds Iasian's home, setting it apart from the rest of the city. As Enkidu gets closer, he finds it increasingly difficult to breathe. The dark aura is suffocating, Fausto says from behind. You came, Enkidu replies with a grin. I knew that you had not changed that much. The call of ale still beckons me, but if we do not stop these creatures, there will be no tavern for me to return to. Whatever your reason, I'm glad you're here. I'm not sure that I can do this alone. The enemies ahead are powerful. Fausto swallows hard, fighting his own anxiety. I know. I have never felt such evil before. I cannot believe that my kinsman has unleashed this horror upon the world. How could such darkness be in his heart? In utter despair, man is capable of unspeakable evils. We must be prepared for the worst. Your kinsman could be actively working with the demons. Iasian! Enkidu shouts, forcing his way through the darkness. What have you done? I shall keep watch out here, Fausto says. Call for me if you need my assistance. Startled by the shouting, Iasian has kept himself shut inside of his home for days. The constant nagging of Sane's phantom voice has left him questioning what is real anymore. What are you doing here, Enkidu? Iasian growls. I warned you to stay away. The demons! Enkidu screams, pounding his fists against his cousin's door. They're ravaging the city. What have you unleashed upon us? Opening his door, he is met by the thick darkness. Waves of malice and evil wash over the man, and he stumbles. Grief and regret fill his existence. He must brace himself with one hand upon the wall. I only sought to share my pain. But you're telling me I did this? Taraxime is dead. The monsters you summoned killed her. Enkidu shouts, taking his kin by the shoulders and violently shaking him. What? She's dead? Whispers Iasian, feeling guilt over the death of the woman he once loved. He stumbles and barely manages to steady himself with a hand on his table. You selfish fool! You're responsible for her death, and the lives of everyone else these monsters have taken. Now put them back! I do not know how. You bastard! Enkidu screams, punching Iasian across the face. The blow sends him over the table, but he seems not to notice, even with blood now running down his lips. Even now, Enkidu treats you with nothing but contempt. He has come to your home and struck you. Teach him his place. Make him suffer. Iasian pushes the voice of Sane into the back of his mind, focusing on what he can do to remedy the horrors he has brought. He never intended for all of Kataltakuk to be placed in danger, or for anyone to be killed. I do not know how to close the door, but I might be able to erect a magical barrier that will seal the area around it and stop any more demons from flooding in. I think I've seen something of the sort here in one of my books. Iasian begins to search through the books, when Fausto is suddenly blasted through the wall. The elder magician lies motionless on the floor among the rubble of the wall. He's bleeding, severely beaten and unconscious. "Whatever you're going to do, get on with it!" Enkidu shouts, drawing Tivan. Yamura, Hui, and Inyana walk in through the newly formed hole in the wall. "Conspiring against us," smiles Yamura. "Like little ants on a piece of wood, scurrying around in panic as it begins to sink into the sea," adds Inyana. The Sakari Queen licks her lips seductively. "You killed 2 of my most honored warriors. Did you truly think that I would not seek you out to make you repay that debt?" Hui is the first to attack. He has no respect for the skill of his enemy, never thinking it possible that he could be bested by a human. Enkidu sidesteps the Grand General, slapping his strike aside at the wrist, and delivering his own counter in the form of a straight right to the chest. As Hui is sent crashing down through a table, Inyana lunges with several furious swipes. Enkidu backpedals, choosing to evade rather than block against the stronger opponent. The Sakari's claws are sharp, and her speed is such that one mistake will cost the man his life. "What are you waiting for, brother?" Inyana asks, seeing that Yamura remains watching. "I will not fight him again without a better understanding of his weaknesses," Yamura replies, watching Enkidu closely. Inyana catches the man with a slash across the cheek, but he retaliates immediately with an elbow that arcs over her face. The Sakari stumbles, blood exploding from her nose and lips. "How dare you!" Inyana growls. "Hui! Yamura! Kill him!" Hui slowly crawls back to his feet, but Yamura does not move. Enkidu sweeps Inyana's feet, but as she falls, Hui lunges with a kick to the chest. Throwing his weight back, Enkidu flips once, before skidding across the floor. Ducking beneath a sword slash from Hui, Enkidu drives an elbow into the Grand General's sternum. Hui staggers back a step, but Inyana picks up his slack with several furious swipes of her claws. The duo give Enkidu no time to strategize, keeping him in constant movement. Any hesitation will surely cost him his life. Yamura continues to observe the battle, studying Enkidu's movements and analyzing all of the man's techniques. One-on-one, he could probably defeat me or Hui. If my sister was used to this world a little better, and in full use of her magic, I do not think that he could prevail. He is resourceful, however, and has allies gifted with spellcraft. There are still too many variables at play here. We should have sent more scouts before charging forward into the siege." Raising Tiavan to block Inyana's claws, Enkidu is driven back by the tremendous force generated by each of the Sakari strikes. The man tries to push back against his foe, but she does not relent. Overpowered, Enkidu changes tactics and maneuvers his backpedaling, so that he becomes pinned against the wall of a stone storage building. Tilting to the side, Enkidu evades Inyana's claws and rotates his body around her, managing to grab the Sakari by the elbow and use her own momentum to drive her through the wall. Enkidu steals a glance back at the one opponent who has remained still the entire battle. "This one bothers me," he thinks. "Why does he stand by while his fellows fight? Could he be stronger than they?" "You damned coward!" Hui screams at Yamura, rushing forward as Inyana is buried in stone. Enkidu notices Hui approaching in the corner of his eye and quickly turns, catching the Grand General with a spinning heel kick to the back of his skull. Hui bounces off the stone rubble, shouting in pain as his body finally comes to a stop, several yards away. Inyana screams in fury, exploding free of the debris. Blood runs down the Sakari's forehead, and a violent cyclone of violet energy encircles her form. "Curse you, insolent monkey! How dare you! I am Inyana, Queen of Averno. You should be at my feet, licking my toes gratefully and begging for me to spare your life." Enkidu shifts his weight into a fighting stance and holds Tiavan at the ready. "I recognize not your authority here, demon. Return to your world or die." "You dare threaten me?" Inyana screams, outraged. "You will know suffering unimaginable for your tongue, vermin." Enkidu winces, shielding his face with one arm against the intense waves of energy generated by the angered Sakari leader. The power he feels is greater than anything he's ever before experienced. This is not good. I do not think I can defeat this one, let alone our two allies. Seeing Enkidu's attention diverted, Yamura suddenly attacks, rushing to the man's left side and coming up quickly with extended claws. Enkidu is unable to redirect his momentum in time, his side punctured by 4 sharp claws. Yamura withdraws his claws, blood splattering to the floor in a thick puddle. Enkidu pivots, backhanding the Sakari through a wall. The entire home shakes as the walls act as the primary supporting structure. Wincing in pain, Enkidu holds his side with one hand to slow the bleeding. I know exactly how fast your reaction time is now, Yamura grins. I've observed you in combat already and studied your movements. There is no possible way for you to defeat us. Better late than never, Inyana growls, releasing her aura and beginning to calm. Did you enjoy seeing me made a fool of, brother? I had to wait until I had our enemy fully evaluated. I am confident now that I can kill him by myself. Enkidu leans back to evade a head-level sword slash from Yamura, but Hui moves in from his right with a thrusting stab. The human tries to twist his body out of the way, but the positioning is tight, and the Sakari are fast. The stab manages to bite through Enkidu's side, and the man buries the pain as best he can, pivoting to plant his heel across Hui's temple and send the Grand General flying across the room. I advised my comrades that underestimating the humans would prove a dangerous mistake, Yamura says. That said, even I did not expect to discover someone here whose skill would rival that of our most elite fighters. Enkidu holds his bleeding wound with one hand. The other grips T-Von slightly. Had we faced each other under different circumstances, our duel might have been more honorable. Honorable? Enkidu growls. You slaughter innocent women and children, and you would have me believe you have any honor? Yamura shrugs. You can believe whatever you want. Soon you will be dead, and it will matter not. Hui pulls himself from the wooden debris of a bookshelf, blood running down his face. What are you doing? Stop chatting and kill him! Yamura steps in with a quick diagonal slash that Enkidu parries. The two trade blows back and forth, neither able to score a single hit. Angered at Yamura's approach to battle, Hui attacks from behind and burns Enkidu's back with a burst of energy. Enkidu stumbles, smoke rolling off his charred back. Yamura steps forward, plunging his sword into Enkidu's stomach. This battle is over, Yamura whispers, his sword sliding into the man's belly. Enkidu suddenly explodes into a cloud of smoke. What? Yamura is caught by a knee to his jaw from the side. Yamura falls to a knee of his own, but pivots, slashing horizontally. Enkidu leaps back, unharmed. I stabbed you, Yamura growls. How were you able to evade? Brother, Inyana interrupts. She points over to the other side of the room. Yamura is surprised to see the other human, Fausto, is now conscious. The magician, she explains. He has your mind confused with illusions. Enkidu attacks again, narrowly missing a downward slice to Yamura's left shoulder. The Sakari evades, slashing wildly to create some space between them while he tries to work out a solution. You attack me with numbers, Enkidu growls. Let us see how you fare when you're outnumbered. Enkidu's form multiplies into 8 copies, each encircling the Sakari general. The duplicate Enkidu's attack, pushing Yamura back with an onslaught of furious blows. Yamura tries to fight back, but his attacks touch only air. Fools, Inyana growls. You're both under the magician's thrall. Could you be troubled to cast a simple spell of protection before battle? Even a child could protect themselves against his level of magic. Tired of Inyana's taunts and of looking weak, Yamura digs his claws into his own thigh. The intense flood of pain allows the Sakari's mind to clear of all confusion. confusion. Now seeing only one Enkidu, Ymura attacks with a slash that surprises the man. Enkidu reels back, blood spraying from his chest. "No more childish games," Ymura growls. "We have wasted too much time on you and this village." "Stop," Inyana interrupts. "You have lost your chance, brother. It has become abundantly clear to me that you are incapable of defeating this human alone." "No," Ymura shouts. "Do not interfere. This battle is mine to finish." Inyana's aura rises with an ominous red glow. A feeling of dread and murderous intent floods over Enkidu, and he shudders. Ymura must also feel this as he backs down immediately. "You do not get to give me orders. You will respect your place," Inyana screams. "Yes, my queen," Ymura whispers. "As you command." "We attack him at once. Not even with the help of the magician can he survive." "Should we not kill the magician first so that he cannot lend support?" Hui asks. Inyana laughs, looking over at Fausto. "He is no threat to us. That human's energy is nearly gone. I suspect that he is using his magic to merely force himself to remain conscious. It is only a matter of time before his body gives out. We kill the warrior first, then the rest of this village will burn." "You cannot continue this anymore," shouts Enkidu, leaping at them and punching Ymura in the face. The blow sends the Sakari crashing through the wall and creating another hole. Enkidu turns to attack the others, but Inyana grabs him by the throat. "I am Queen of Averno. No pathetic ape is going to best me." "Let go of him," shouts Iasian, breaking a wooden chair over Inyana's back. "What are you going to do, monkey? You are not even a warrior," she laughs. "I'm the one that set you free, and the one who is going to send you back." Inyana drops Enkidu, interested in Iasian's boast. Enkidu falls to the floor and coughs, gasping for breath. Iasian begins to prepare an incantation, but Inyana's superior speed brings her to him before he can finish. She grabs him by the throat and lifts him off the ground. "Is that so?" she grins. "Your distraction has only traded your life for his." Enkidu lunges from behind, dropping his shoulder into Inyana's ribs, and sends her crashing into the wall. And Inyana slams into the wall, breaking through into the street, and creating another hole. This causes the building to cave in all around them. Enkidu manages to bring his arms up over his head in defense as the building rains down on them. He sits up from the rubble, covered in debris. He looks to the side to see a large wooden beam lying over Inyana, who lies motionless. "Iasian, can you hear me? While she is down, send them back and seal off the doorway." "I told you, I cannot send them back." Iasian stops, his voice trailing off into a gurgle. He looks down to see a hand through his chest. "You are not sending us back anywhere, human," says Ymura. Ymura pulls his hand free, and Iasian falls to his face, blood trailing from the wound. "You monster!" screams Enkidu, leaping at Ymura and nailing him with several solid blows to the face. Ymura flies back, crashing into the rubble. "Iasian, hang on! Please, forgive me. Save your strength. Take this book. Inside, there is a spell to trap powerful essences. I may have not been able to do it, but with a real magician you can. Construct holding devices. The book details how. Then seal them inside. Throw them in the portal, and then close it off. You will need 7 magicians in a circle to perform the spell to close the gateway." Iasian hands Enkidu the Book of the Black Earth and begins to drool blood. "I hope the next time we meet, I will be more like you," says Iasian. His eyes roll back, and his head drops to the side, lifeless. Enkidu screams in fury, pounding the ground until his fists become bloody. He clutches the book to his chest tightly. He notices that Inyana has begun to stir, and he begins to frantically search the rubble for Fausto. He finally manages to grab the magician and pull him up. Slinging Fausto over his shoulder, Enkidu dashes out into the alley and disappears into the night. Inyana pushes the wooden beam off her chest and curses as she sees her armor is bent and no longer fits. She tears the armor off and tosses it aside. She stands up and finds her brother is still unconscious. She reaches down and angrily pulls Yamura to his feet by an arm. "Once again, he has gotten away from us," she explains to him. Frustrated by his defeat, Yamura leaves to be alone. Utilizing his time for recovery and strategy, the general is disappointed by his own performance. He knew this human had to have been strong to have bested both Udu and Gishbar, but he never imagined that Enkidu's power would so closely rival his own. And while I am the aggressor, he gains the added boost of having something to protect. Yamura thinks with frustration. The position we have put them in only strengthens a man such as he. Observing from a distance, Nazir watches the general as he wraps bandages around the numerous cuts carved into his flesh. He finds it remarkable the human strength is such that it can cut through the armor of Sakari elites. "You might as well come out and meet me face to face, rather than slinking around the shadows like a coward," Yamura says. "Or do you only strike when backs are turned and your victim's guard is down?" "The great General Yamura," Nazria says mockingly. "I've admired your strength and watched your career with interest." "I bet you have," Yamura growls. "So, the rumors are true, I take it. You steal the abilities of others." Nazria nods. "Among other things, we have powers that share a common ancestor, though mine has been developed far beyond the capacity of your own." Yamura eyes the thief and murderer with suspicion. "What are you going on about?" "The seal ability," Nazria explains. "The same ability that allows you to recover from fatal injuries also transfers the powers of others into me." "How do you even know about my seal Asilaire?" Yamura becomes slightly nervous. Very few individuals are aware of his power, and even fewer know its name. "My ability is called Seal Volaire," Nazria replies with a grin. "I assume both abilities sprang from a more primitive energy absorption technique long ago. Whereas your seal only gifts you with energy to promote regeneration and healing, mine transfers all of the powers of a target." Yamura stands, wincing in pain. He tries not to show exactly how difficult a time he's having. Should the thief learn the extent of his injuries, he may attack with more zeal and less reservation. "So you come here, stalking me in the shadows. I suppose you wish to multiply the potency of your seal by gaining my own." Nazria again nods. "Why train an ability when one can strengthen it? Much easier other ways." "You dishonor our people with your actions," Yamura growls, drawing his sword. "The Sakari grow their strength through hard work, and pushing ourselves to our very limits. Not when there is a much easier path. I have surpassed my station in life through my cunning and intelligence. You may have been born into royalty, but the rest of us were not so fortunate. While you have received personal trainers and were tutored in all of the arts, others like me had to murder just to grow strong enough to survive in a world that cares not whether I live or die. My abilities grew out of circumstance. I had to grow stronger to make it to the next day. With your silver spoon, you can never understand where someone like me comes from. Using your past as a crutch is disgraceful. My father was murdered by the scheming of my own sister and her mate. I was forced into military servitude in lieu of execution. I scraped and clawed my way to the top of the ranks and became a general, not because of my name or my past, but because of my hard work. I will put my training against your thievery any day with the highest confidence of my victory. Nazria conjures twin blades of sparkling energy, a technique stolen from a warrior named Maskil from the village of Luakar. I have been watching this war unfold. While you pompously strode in on your Upas, I was already learning to survive in this human world. You underestimated the humans and are 2 generals fewer as a result. I would never underestimate my foes because I know what it is like to be counted as nothing before a battle even begins. It was through my enemies looking down on me as a lesser that I was able to best my earliest prey. Ymura makes the first move, which is exactly as Nazria would have predicted. The thief is far more patient and reactionary, having survived many battles by merely anticipating the attacks of his opponents and countering with a specifically chosen response meant to end their life as quickly as possible. Slashing horizontally with his sword, Ymura advances with a speed concealing all of his energies. Nazria retreats backward, barely able to dodge without being split open. The thief counters, scissoring his energy blades towards Ymura's neck for a precise decapitation. With a burst of black energy, Ymura spins out of Nazria's reach and manages to reverse his swing into a rising diagonal slice. Nazria is left exposed and unable to avoid the blow, blood exploding from the red line that opens up from his midsection up to his left shoulder. Nazria drops to a knee, still clutching his bleeding chest. All of your stolen powers are nothing to me, Ymura says. I am not finished, Nazria coughs. I have hundreds of ways to counter you. And yet you are unable. Cursing, Nazria rises to his feet and draws forth an ability that grants him an iron-like hide. Ymura sidesteps his sluggish punches, retaliating with dozens of sword strikes that merely bounce off in a shower of sparks. Nazria's bulky defense causes him to be too slow to successfully attack, but prevents him from suffering any further damage. The thief quickly realizes their stalemate, and after blocking against Ymura's next wave of attacks, he utilizes an ability that causes his arm to elongate and wrap tightly around the general's throat. Ymura tries to cut through Nazria's arm with his sword, but his opponent sends his other arm out to wrap around the general's wrist. Raitoshi, Nazria growls, flooding Ymura with electric energy. Ymura struggles to think of a way to counter the unknown number of hidden techniques of his opponent, in between flashes of electricity. Using his free arm, Ymura drives his claws through Nazria's hand, and causes him to loosen his grip just enough for the general to muscle his way free before another wave of electrical energy hits. Ymura leaps backward, his chest heaving and panting heavily. You cannot expect to survive all of my attacks, Nazria boasts. My power is simply too much for you to handle. I would sacrifice my own life before allowing my energy to become yours, Ymura growls. Give that a try, Nazria laughs. I do not know about your seal, but once activated, mine encompasses the entire battlefield of my choosing. I do not need to be the one to score the kill to reap the spoils, so long as my stamina holds out. Ymura tenses, disturbed by this revelation. It's very unlikely that Nazria has caught the entirety of Katalta Cook in his web, and has been slowly absorbing the energy of all those slain, both human and Sakari. Even the powers of Udu and Gishbar could have been stolen by his underhanded foe. As if reading Ymura's thoughts, Nazria's claws begin to drip with poisonous secretions, a trademark of the old Feast clan. Fighting with deadly poisons is a technique stolen from the late General Udu. Damn you, Ymura growls. You have no right to those powers. I have every right, Nasria shouts. Having superior strength gives me the right to do whatever I desire. Ymura tries to calm his breathing and recenter his energy. Black waves rise from the Sakari's body as he focuses not on his foe, but on his own self. Are you trying to summon up the black flame? Nasria taunts. I know all of your abilities. You cannot fool me into thinking that you can summon the flame at will. You have not perfected that technique. I have studied you and the other generals for years, learning all that I can about you, so that the day when we finally crossed blades, I would have the upper hand. If you do not think that I can manifest the black flame, why do you choose now for our confrontation? A power-hungry coward such as you should think it best to wait until I have mastered the ability before attempting to steal it from me. Am I wrong? Nasria laughs. I know what you are doing. You cannot provoke me to anger, Ymura. I have fought and killed hundreds of warriors and sages, with varying degrees of skill and combat prowess. I have seen every attempt at fighting, including mental. Ymura shrugs. Then I suppose you are my superior, then. There is nothing I can do to win. I might as well just give up. Mocking me will not help you either, Nasria growls. But I will prove to you that your words are true. You cannot win. Nasria lunges with his poison-tipped claws, but Ymura sidesteps, driving a knee upwards into his opponent's chest. The blow lifts Nasria off the ground and Ymura pivots, delivering a devastating right hook that puts the thief down flat on its face. Nasria's head spins, and it's clear that he's severely concussed. How? I had all of his strength scouted. I know all of his abilities. How was he able to evade me and deliver such devastating blows? Nasria thinks in panic. What have I missed? Have I completely misjudged him? The pain is great, and he wants nothing more than to stay down and drift into slumber. But instinct and self-preservation causes him to scramble away quickly into the shadows. Never before has Nasria faced an opponent that has so easily dealt him such painful blows. Always, Nasria has taken his time, observing his targets for weeks, months, and even years before striking. Not until he knows all there is to know about an opponent does he finally strike. For years he has watched from a distance Ymura and the other generals. He knows that Ymura should not be this strong. He wonders now if Ymura has been holding back purposely, so that others do not know his full strength. This trickery was not meant for me, Nasria thinks. I fell into a trap meant for another. He has been hiding his power from the other generals and his sister, but why? I must get away. I cannot fight him at this disadvantage. I do not know his full strength. He could be hiding any number of things. Is that how it is? Ymura asks. Retreat when you cannot ambush your prey successfully. You disgust me, thief. You are unworthy of the abilities you have stolen. Keep gloating, Ymura, Nasria replies with a hiss. You will slip up one day, and I will be there to stand over your remains and choke whatever life is left within you, from you. When the humans have been dealt with, I shall personally hunt you down and execute you for the lives you have dishonored. Nasria slips away in defeat, leaving both combatants in worse condition than when they began. Should the wrong person come upon either of them, they could be killed. To Ymura's luck, it is his sister that discovers him first. What happened to you? Inyana asks. I know that the human did not inflict that much damage to you. Ymir groans, not wishing to explain himself. It was not the human that attacked me. It was one of our own. Nyana's eyebrows arched with surprise. One of our soldiers was strong enough to attack you? It was no soldier. It was the criminal in Nasria. Nyana is even more surprised. And Nasria is still alive? That worm is resourceful. And even stronger than before. He has a seal ability greater than mine. He has been absorbing the energy and powers of all who have died in this battle. The longer this invasion proceeds, the stronger he will become. We will hunt that traitor down and deal with him later. Come, we must first take this city and repay the humans for their insolence.